please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
But the BJP lead is definitely cheering the markets, and we have two guests who join in now. First up, we have Mark Matthews of Bank Julius Baer, who's with us. Mark, thank you for waiting patiently by. You know, BJP being at the helm in Karnataka has larger positive ramifications for what happens in 2019 with perhaps a stable government at the center. Do you think this political premium is something that the Indian markets could continue to enjoy? And, you know, how would you approach the markets now?
I think it is. I think the two major things that were weighing on the Indian market this year were the higher oil price and the prospect of more government spending ahead of the general election next year. And the Karnataka result is, well, we'll see what the actual number is in the end, but these exit polls are extremely encouraging. In other words, perhaps we won't need to see as much fiscal stimulus, and therefore the current account deficit won't be as wide. And from a foreign investor perspective, this is encouraging because the thing that has kept many people away is the rupee. Rupee going to, I think, almost 67 a week or two ago. So if it looks like there's stability in the currency, then they'd feel more comfortable dipping their toes in the water there.
Mm-hmm. We have Saurabh Mukherjee also with us, a long-time veteran of the markets. Saurabh, would you agree with what Mark is saying? Should this result not require the BJP to go the distance in terms of populist measures and therefore having less of a malignant impact on the fiscal deficit?
I think the main positive, Latha, I would take if the BJP does indeed come to power by itself in Karnataka, the main positive I would take is I think it puts paid to hopes of an early election. I think it's almost certain then if they get a resounding verdict here, I don't see any reason why they won't stay the full term. That in turn pushes out the elections by another 3, 4, 5 months, and basically the current fiscal, the entire financial year, the BJP will be running the show. And
but why are you making that equation? If they do win on their own strength, would it not make sense to cash in on the existing popularity and go ahead with an early poll?
Could well be, but I think the reason I said what I said was there was a point of view 2-3 months ago from certain strategists that the support lines for the BJP were trending downwards, the 10 by-election results that had gone against them, and hence there was a certain point of view. The longer the BJP waits, the greater the loss in popularity. I think Karnataka puts paid to that theory. There clearly is no structural downtrend in BJP support, and if that's the case, they should last the whole term. So I think it pushes populism out. I'm not so sure the populism goes away because farm loan waivers was a plank in Karnataka, and as the government has been very clear since the budget that we will see a hefty minimum support price hike, or rather farmers will get a 50% profit margin on their crops. And I think the three planks of the election now are well established. It's farmer support or populism for farmers, secondly the anti-corruption drive, and thirdly the age-old issues around religion in our country. I think Karnataka saw an early version of that. I think we'll see more of that through the second half of the current financial year. But the good news is we pushed the elections out 3-4 months ago from the looks of it.
So today, of course, Saurabh, good morning. The market is riding high on this, adrenaline rush of the election results. Tomorrow we'll get back to reality.
Sure.
And there are issues, right? Higher crude prices, the fiscal impact, etc. You think all of that could put a lid on the market growth in the near term?
I think let's look at the big positive. I think the big positive, leaving aside politics, is that the economy clearly is recovering. I've been saying this for the last 6 months. It's clear that since the GST rollbacks of October, November, plus the normalization of the economy after the twin shocks of Demon and GST, the economy clearly is in fine fettle. And in a way, what this election result will do is put a sort of positive spin on the climate and make everybody feel good. The black cloud on the horizon, globally and in our country, is the higher cost of capital. Whether it's the US 10-year bond yield, our own 10-year bond yield, which is now touching 7.8. The higher cost of capital and the interplay of that with the currency, I think, is the concern. But I think that's par for the course. You typically have cost of capital rising as an economy steams into life, and it looks as if we are in the fag end globally. We're in the fag end of what's been a tremendous rally across the world in the last 4-5 years.
Okay. Well, Mark, let me toss this to you. How are you? Yesterday we got higher than expected inflation numbers. Bond yields have now reached almost 7.9, 7.86 on the 10-year. How would you look at the macros? Worries about growth, or do you think these are actually indications of growth?
I think it depends on what's pushing them up, which is, I'm not really sure why the Indian bond yields have risen so sharply, but generally emerging market bonds have gone up very sharply, so I presume it's part of a broader trade. And in fact, I saw some analysis recently that when you reached a spread as wide as where we are today in emerging bonds over treasuries, over the next 3, 6, and 12 months, going back over the last 20-odd years, you would always see a positive return in them. So there could indeed be a buying opportunity there. The broader market, the equity market, I also would just point out is in a very strong earnings upcycle where the most recent quarterly results are clearly demonstrating we're going to get at least 20% earnings growth this year.
But do you see foreign investors dipping their toes in? They have actually avoided the Indian markets. We've got negative figures for the longest time now. Will there be a coming back, or will they still continue to worry about crude and the rupee?
Well, it depends on crude oil and politics, and I think that crude oil, it's tough to call. The supply-demand dynamics are probably in favor of it staying at this kind of price where it is now. But on politics, I think most foreign investors were quite shocked at the Gujarat elections back in November. So if these Karnataka elections end up being what the polls are telling us, the exit polls, then I think that will cause some people to become more optimistic on the market, without a doubt.
Hi, welcome back. Well, as you can see, the BJP may form the government on its own in Karnataka. 111 seats now. The Congress is at 66. The market seems to have reacted to that already. 10,900 is where the Nifty is at and going strong. We have been,
Yeah, I think 66 plus 44 is also only 110.
Yeah.
So even if you add up Congress and JDS, it doesn't come to the BJP.
Actually, I think that's the positive surprise, right? When we went into the results, the most positive outcome, the expectation was the BJP plus JDS combined. But now if they go and they form the government alone, and that of course is the big positive surprise that the market is pricing in. But we have been in conversation with Saurabh Mukherjee, the CEO of Ambit Capital. He's still with us. Saurabh, you know, we were discussing some of the sectors and how to approach them. The big concern, as we were talking about earlier, is that cost of funding has risen quite a bit. So borrowing money has become a bit more expensive now. What kind of an impact do you think that would have on sectors like NBFCs, etc.? Do you think they'll lose flavor this year?
I think there'll be two broad shifts in the market. Whilst I think the economic recovery continues and courtesy political developments like this, I think investor confidence could also sustain. But there are two broad shifts. I think as oil and input price pressure comes through and cost of funding pressure comes through, I think smaller companies will have a bigger struggle. Smaller companies will have a far greater struggle maintaining operating margins, and therefore I think a migration away from small cap towards larger cap over the course of the year seems to be more likely than not. And secondly, as you were saying, within financials, companies that are wholesale market funded, I think will face greater challenges on their funding cost than banks who have a strong CASA funding base. So I know some of the private sector banks with strong CASA funding base have been in the news for all the wrong reasons. But ironically, if you have a strong CASA base this year, will be an epic year for a bank with a super CASA franchise, because wholesale market costs are rising quite sharply, and you will see that crimping margins of lenders who rely upon wholesale market funding.
You will touch the PSU banks at all? Some of them have very big CASA franchises.
PSU banks, Lata, are a different sort of political economy discourse, which I don't think I can cover in a TV studio. I've never felt comfortable investing in them, and I think there's I think we would rather wait for the new, for the political dispensation to come up with a clear strategy next year before we make a call on PSU banks.
Okay, what are your thoughts on Piyush Goyal getting the interim charge of the Finance Ministry? How do you think that could change things at the helm?
Well, it's clearly been one of the most visible ministers in this government. First in coal and power, and even in railways has been very visible. So I'm not surprised. He knows the subject. He's a man from this city. He's a chartered accountant, investment banker. So I'm not surprised. What he, whether he can lay out his policy agenda, given that it's an interim job, remains to be seen. My suspicion is, I think this is probably sort of warming him up for the job, and once the elections are done, he might get this portfolio for keeps. That'll be very interesting if he does. Somebody from Mumbai, somebody from the banking community, financial services community, becoming finance minister will genuinely be a big development for at least the financial brethren.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm not claiming to be a medico, but I had a person with a kidney transplant in the family, and you normally can't function for a year. The immunosuppressants that you go through will have to keep you cordoned off and you know, safe from infection for a longish bit. And therefore, I would agree with you that Piyush Goyal is going to be there till the elections are called, definitely. And therefore, you know, bring to bear whatever his view on MSP or other policies. 9 months is a long time, and some policies can come. But Saurabh, just to come back to how you would play a sector sectorally, within the financials, you said you will prefer CASA. How would you give us some nuanced preferences in the NBFC space?
So look, I think within the NBFCs, the finance companies, they're borrowing short term in the wholesale market, and they're lending for home loans which are as long as 20 years duration. With cost of funding rising, I think the NBFCs, the HFCs, the housing finance companies, or indeed NBFCs who have big housing finance books, I think the challenges are the greatest for them. The challenges are more mitigated, more modest, I think, for truck financiers or auto financiers, because their loans tend to be shorter in tenor. But my reckoning is that the high noon for the NBFC price to book in this cycle, I think the high noon is past us, and I think the reversion to market share gains by lenders who have strong CASA franchises, to me, appears more likely than not over the next couple of years. The CASA funded lenders lost a lot of market share to NBFCs in both home loans, car loans, auto loans, right through the last 3-4 years. I think they'll gain some of that in the next couple of years.
Okay. And specifically general insurance, they make money only on on yields. So how would you play insurance, guys?
I think there's two different stories, I think, in the insurance world. One is life insurance as a long-term savings play. As the RBI pointed out last year, 95% of Indian wealth is in physical assets. That clearly doesn't sound very sustainable. So over time, over the next decade or so, there'll be a big move by Indians towards financial assets. And I think life insurance benefits from that. General insurance, I think, is more a play alongside consumption. I think I would see it as a proxy to consumption rather than to financial services.
The indices have been kind of steady, a little south of 1% gain for the Nifty and the Sensex, and 1.5% for the Nifty Bank. I think the markets have priced in and are now waiting only perhaps for the last flourish, confirming perhaps the BJP making a government on its own. At 114, that looks likely. So now let's shift to business as usual. The big Nifty company that will be reporting numbers today is Lupin. Ekta is here to tell us what are the big numbers we should watch out for.
Well, it is expected to be another subdued quarter for Lupin this time round. So the revenue is expected to decline around 7.6%, with margins coming in at around 18.7%, which would be flat on a year-on-year basis, but improve on a sequential basis, and a profit decline of around 11%. The key culprit this quarter will continue to be the US market. So North America is around 37% of sales, and pricing pressure is expected to continue in terms of their key generics portfolio, including the diabetes franchise of drugs, which is Glumetza as well as Fortimen, and hence that pricing pressure on a year-on-year basis will impact the entire set of numbers. India, which is around 25% of sales, is likely to buck the trend. Overall commentary with regards to the US FDA plant, two plants which have a warning letter on them, that is their Goa plant as well as Pithampur 2, will be very closely watched, along with their commentary on pricing pressure.
Seat tally yet again, 115, so now that's looking like a clear majority. Of course, these are leads, but even the official Election Commission website indicates that the BJP has got leads in 109 out of 200. Okay, now it is 111 out of 206. 111 is just too short of a majority. Yes, they are leads, but this is the official Election Commission website, and therefore becomes that much more sacred. With that, let's toss it to Manisha Gupta, who, of course, is not bound by local politics at all. What are the international concerns, Manisha?
Well, it clearly has to be the crude oil prices, where we have seen further strength come in. $78 per barrel is holding yet again, and that's nearly $2 of a jump up in crude oil prices in last 24 hours. So we are looking at gains coming back for the Indian markets as well, very close to that 4,800 mark. This is after the OPEC monthly report, which is saying that the global glut situation seems to be now eliminating. And you also have seen an outlook for prices for 2018 and 2019 being put on the higher side, not just by OPEC, but other international agencies, by banks, brokerages. Almost everybody now seems to be working within that 80 to 90 crude oil prices for this year and the next as well. And that, of course, could be a bit of a dampener, and inflation concerns could be arising out of that as we go forward. Gold and silver prices in the meanwhile have seen some profit taking continuing. The US dollar trading on the higher side, the equity markets trading firm is something that has taken money out of these two commodities. So a bit of a weakness, 0.5% down on both of those commodities. The base metal prices in the meanwhile have been quite mixed. Yesterday was a good day. We saw almost everything gaining in the New York session. The copper prices have seen a bit of a decline, 0.5% down, and that's because the LME inventories have seen a jump up. Aluminum prices have gone in for profit taking as well. This is after the China production number is gained by 1.5% in the previous month. You saw overnight markets gain. Nickel was up 3.5%. Zinc was up. Lead was up nearly a percentage point as well. But some bit of a profit taking across board on that space as well. Zinc is the only one that's holding, and that's because the international markets have seen inventories decline, demand gain up because of the galvanized use of that, and that perhaps has been supportive. But trading strategies, and we have them from KDA Commodities, and they have a buy call on the energy side of the space. For crude oil prices, they expect the prices to gain up today, and for natural gas as well, they're expecting that market to gain too. For crude especially, 4880 are your targets to watch out for.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Manisha. But today, less of international concerns and more of local concerns. The Karnataka Congress has conceded defeat and the BJP looks like lead-wise is crossing 113, a little emphatically now, 115. It's back to Shireen, who is giving you the latest election tally.
Well, that is right, Lata. The numbers speak the story, and it is the BJP that is storming now, at least in the south. This was the hope of the BJP, that via Karnataka it would try and make inroads into the south, and that's exactly how the script has played out. Remember, Amit Shah said 120. If you go by the numbers on your screen, it's 115 for the BJP at this point in time. They have crossed that magic number of 113. So Deve Gowda may not need to play kingmaker at all at the end of the day. Siddaramaiah, very, very confident of being able to take the Congress back to a second innings. Hasn't worked out that way. It's been a loss for the Congress in crucial stronghold areas. And of course, the BJP has wrested control, taken away the vote share, taken away some of the seats that the Congress was hoping to bank on. It's 64 for the Congress, the BJP at 115, and the JDS at 42. What does this now really mean? Through this campaign, what we've seen the BJP say, or the script, the narrative to the voters is that, look, if you have the same leadership at the center and the state will benefit. And that has been the story that the BJP has sold to the people of Karnataka. Of course, it has been about caste arithmetic as well to a large extent. And at this point in time, it looks like the BJP machinery, the election machinery, has effectively been able to combat the threat that Siddaramaiah was putting up. And at this point in time, it looks like they're home. This is the start now of a new innings as far as the BJP is concerned. And this is now going to bolster the BJP. There's already chatter here in Delhi on the possibility of early elections, etc. But, you know, today is not the day to discuss any of that. Today is the day. The celebration has already started across the BJP headquarters in Karnataka. You will see visuals of that play out. So they believe that this is, of course, the state leadership, Yediyurappa, according to Sadanand Gara, there is absolutely no doubt that Yediyurappa will be the chief minister, that they will continue to back the story that they sold to the voters of Karnataka in the campaign. And of course, the prime minister has made a big difference. The visuals there coming in on your screens of celebrations across the BJP headquarters from Karnataka to New Delhi.
Okay, yes, as you can see, Karnataka has turned saffron as well, and all of this has boosted the markets. Almost a 400-point rally is what we're seeing on the Sensex right now.